Hey guys, it's Casey. Welcome back to my channel. Before we start the video, very important note, I just want to note that I'm wearing my Captain America shirt. I am still so into the Avengers, even though it's been out for like 2 weeks. I'm dying to see it a second time, but I don't know when I'll see it. Anyway, that is not what this video is about. I wish it was, and so do you, but it's not. So the other day I was watching someone, I can't remember who, exactly, but she just casually mentioned in one of her videos that she's never found a nonfiction book that she liked. And if you've watched my video, my channel and my videos at all in the past, you know that I used to exclusively read nonfiction, especially before BookTube. And even now, I still read maybe 25 to 30% nonfiction, which I think for BookTube is a lot. Most booktubers don't read nonfiction. And so this video is going to be a beginner's guide to nonfiction. I'm going to give 4 tips that I think that anyone that's never really read nonfiction or never liked it, they can use to find a nonfiction book that they like. So tip number 1 is if you just don't know where to start, you have no basis for what books to read in nonfiction, you just want like a go-to book. I have 3 authors for you to try out. The first one is Erik Larson. He's written books called Isaac Storm, which is about a hurricane in Texas, The Dead Awake, which is about a boat sinking, like a famous one, not the Titanic, but I don't care about boat sinking, so I've never read that one. He wrote one about Hitler. It's called Garden of Beasts. And then his most famous one, I guarantee if you've been into a bookstore, you've seen this. It's called The Devil in the White City. And that one's about the Chicago Fair, and also H.H. Holmes, who was America's first serial killer. So he's one. Erik Larson is one. The second one is Michael Lewis. He's most famous for writing The Blind Side and Moneyball. Those are 2 sports books. Blind Side's about football, and Moneyball's about baseball. I actually reviewed Moneyball in my top 5 baseball books. I'll leave that video linked down below. He's also written ones about the stock market, The Big Short. All 3 of those books were made into movies, and then he's written some other ones as well. And the third author is Sebastian Junger. He's most famous for writing The Perfect Storm, which again was made into a movie. And he also wrote one that I'm super interested in. It's called The Tribe. It just came out pretty recently, within the last couple of years. And it's very short, so that'd be a good one to start out with. It's less than 150 pages, and it's about how important it is for society, like for humans, individuals, to be a part of a tribe. Whether that's, he focuses on the military, but I think he also references back to like Native American tribes, and just how it's important for humans to have that interaction and that bond. The reason why I recommend those 3 authors is, first of all, they're famous in the not even the nonfiction world, in the book world. They are famous. You've seen their book covers. All 3 of them have had movies made. Erik Larson's Devil in the White City is being currently made into a movie. And so I think that they're like the most approachable. Plus, their books are just plain good. The thing with nonfiction is people have this idea that it's boring, that it's going to be slow, that they're just not going to be able to get into it like they can with a fiction book. And that's just plain wrong. All 3 of these authors, and a ton other of authors, have the distinct ability to take an event and put you in it. Like, you are there. When I read Moneyball, I was playing baseball, for the Oakland A's. A really great example of this is called The Boys of Winter by Wayne Coffey. This book follows the 1980 U.S. American Olympic men's hockey team. I feel like I just said a lot of words there. It follows the hockey team of the Do You Believe in Miracles? The American team. Spoiler, beat the Russians. But what's great about that book is the ending. America wins. Because America's the best. No, I'm kidding. Well, I'm not kidding. But anywho, the ending. That America wins. And so what Wayne Coffey does is over the course of 300 pages, he breaks up that specific game between the Americans and the Russians bit by bit. You go minute by minute into that game, and in between it, he weaves the narrative, and he goes back to the childhoods of the players, and back to how they formed as a team, and back into Herb Brooks, who was the coach. But even though you know the ending of that game, it's still nail-biting when you're reading it minute by minute. You're there, and you just want to know how they came about to win. And that is what great nonfiction can do. Even though you know how it ends, probably most likely, in Erik Larson's the Dead Awake, you know that boat crashes. It's not a spoiler, like, it's history. But great nonfiction authors can bring such a drama to their books that makes them just as alive as fiction books can. The other aspect of these particular three writers is that they are able to take one topic. So let's use The Perfect Storm, for example. So what Sebastian Junger does in that story is he takes one particular storm system, just like a normal storm that was over New England. And what he does is he can explode that out to cover a ton of topics. So he covers the he covers the weather aspect of that storm, and how it formed, and how it was really two storms combined, and how that could only happen, like, you know, in 100 years or whatever. And then he goes and he covers the Andrea Gale, a fishing boat, and how it interacted with the storm. And then he went and covered those fishermen and covered their lives and their childhood back on land, and what that town that they were from was like in Massachusetts, and how hard it is to be a fishing community and to have the life of a fisherman. Then he also followed a second boat and about its interaction with the storm, and how the Coast Guard had to come and save them. So then he covered the Coast Guard. So what he did was he took something small, the storm, and he compounded it to cover something much larger. And he covered all of the aspects and all of the drama that went into that storm, so that you have a full understanding of how something small, like a storm, can impact millions and millions of lives. Or even if it doesn't, even if it just, say that storm had only impacted those fishermen on the Andrea Gale, like, even that was enough, you know, hearing about how hard their lives was, and knowing what's going to happen to them, because you do know what's going to happen to them. So I see all of those authors do it. Michael Larson and what he did with the stock market. I mean, who wants to read about the stock market? That, I agree, that's boring. But what he is able to do in The Big Short is make it not boring, and make it dramatic, and make it just as colorful as any fiction book that you've read. So those are definitely my three top favorite go-to nonfiction writers. I think that their material is really colorful and engaging for beginning nonfiction readers to get them engaged. It's not dry, it's interactive. My second tip is to just start with a topic that you're interested in. They have nonfiction books about any sort of topics. If you're into music, if you're into Hollywood, knitting, if you like history, if you like a specific subset of history, like Egyptian history, you know, there are books about everything. I once read a book that was about the song Hallelujah. That's all it was about, was that song, and how it was created by Leonard Cohen, and then Jeff Buckley got it, and then all these people on American Idol redid it, and it was like 350 pages about the song Hallelujah, and it was one of the best nonfiction books that I have read. Recently I saw that there are 2 books about dictionaries, and I want to read both of them. They sound amazing. I do have some suggestions for you. So I love The Bachelor. Like, I love reality TV. I'm just like, I love it. The trashier, the better. So if you also like The Bachelor, there's this book, Bachelor Nation by Amy Kaufman. I'm currently reading this. I'm about like a third of the way through. And it gives juicy details about The Bachelor, but it's also more like of a social aspect to it, like a social study of why do people want to watch other people date? Like, why is it fascinating? And the great thing about this book is it goes back and it covers like the very first dating shows, like The Dating Game, and it covers the dating shows on MTV from the late 90s and early 2000s. And then it goes and it gives me everything I want about The Bachelor and also digs deeper into it. So this would be a great one if you love reality shows, and just if you want to stay on top of more timely things going on in the world. There's I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. This one is about the Golden State Killer who very recently, within the last couple weeks, actually got caught. This is so good. I'm about a third to a half of the way done with this book, and it is one of the best books that I've written. I wish I wrote it, that I've read. It's very reminiscent, her writing style, of the Erik Larson, Michael Lewis, Sebastian Junger. She does that same thing where she can like really pinpoint something and kind of break it out for you. And it is true crime, so if you're at all like queasy about it, I mean, she doesn't get gory or anything, but I mean, she's very factual about what happened to these people. And this is like something everyone's talking about, so this would be a great book to read too. But just find whatever you're interested in, and there'll be books about it. And then I've read books about the Amish community, about pirates, about army wives. I'm not in the army, and I'm not a wife, but I've read about 5 books about army wives. There's books about everything, so just really find what you're interested in and use that as your starting point, and then you'll kind of expand into other areas. My third tip, if you still can't find a book that you like, is to go for a celebrity memoir. I love celebrity memoirs. I've read probably a dozen of them. I've read all of Tori Spelling's books. I just earlier this year I read Rob Lowe's Stories I Only Tell My Friends. His book is interesting because I think he kind of glossed over the kind of worst parts of his life when he was like cheating on girlfriends and stuff like that. But I still really enjoyed it. I have a book up here about a housewife biography. Like, I mean, just whatever celebrity you're into, they're going to have a memoir, basically. One of my favorites is Along the Way. It's a dual memoir about Martin Sheen and Emilio Estevez. So Martin Sheen's the dad and Emilio is his son. They're both actors. I didn't know if I had to point that out, but since they have different names. And so what this one does, it's really interesting because it starts out with Emilio's perspective. No, it doesn't. It starts out with Martin Sheen's perspective and tells about his childhood and everything. And then once they get to where Emilio is born, they kind of flip chapters. So for example, Emilio was in the movie The Outsiders. So he covers The Outsiders and when his dad came to visit and he was really embarrassed by his dad, like wanting to go to church or something. And then you get the very next chapter is Martin's take on that incident and about why going to church even when he visited his son on the set was so important to him and his sobriety and things like that. It's so interesting. It's so good. If you're even a little bit interested in Martin Sheen or Emilio. I mean, I love the Mighty Ducks growing up, but Martin Sheen I really love from like The West Wing and everything. I would really recommend this. It was so good. I want to see if they have the audiobook out and like listen to them tell it, because that's always interesting too. That's another good tip. You get a free tip for me is with celebrity memoirs, if there's an audiobook out and that they narrate it, it really adds a lot to it. Recently, I was listening to Lauren Graham's book called Talking as Fast as I Can, and it's her memoir about Gilmore Girls and her life and everything, and she narrates it, and it added a lot to it because you can hear like the nuances in their voice that I think is really interesting. And then my last tip is kind of a simple one, but I think it's important to go into reading nonfiction positively. If you think it's going to be boring, then it's going to be boring. If you're positive and know that it can be as filling and as action-packed and dramatic as fiction, then you're going to have a much better experience with it. So I hope those tips helped you find either some great new books I've recommended, or just maybe gave you a little more insight into why I love reading nonfiction. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite nonfiction book is. I'd love to hear that and get maybe some new suggestions. I'm always looking for new nonfiction books. Please subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.